Why didn't anyone tell me that I'm catching feelings until episode 7 is literally asexuality? Hi friends! I hope you're having a good Pride month, even with some of the things going in this world. But I still hope you're finding some whimsy and fun in some of the things in this life. Today, it's all about demisexuality, which is a sexuality which is part of the asexual spectrum. And also this video is about basically the representation of asexuality and demisexuality in like BL series, but also about my own journey with discovering that I'm demisexual. Yay! Let's start with a short definition. Okay, so demisexual, as I said before, is part of the asexual spectrum, and it basically means that you only experience sexual attraction when you have a close personal emotional bond with that person, with that someone. But also, it's not that once you form that bond, you don't have to feel sexual attraction. It's just that this is kind of like the thing I feel about demisexuality. It doesn't guarantee it, but it definitely helps, and that's why it's a sexuality, because the bond is like needed basically, which has its own like difficulties, for example, in dating. But we will get into all of these things later. Let's first talk about my favorite thing, which is BL series. So the canon representation of asexuality and people on the A spectrum is not the greatest, especially like in Thai BL, there's only one character which is actually said it out loud, and there's a few in like Japanese BLs as well. And so in the Thai BL Wandee Good, which aired last year, the character Blackout, played by Drake, who is the best friend of the main character Wandee, who's they're both doctors. And he basically says this like within the first 2 episodes, I would say. He says it several times in the series that he's asexual, and that he also has tough trouble like dating. As like, I feel like that's just, it's a sad fact, but it's true. And he's also dating men. So it's like he's having troubles with that. And then he also talks a lot with Wandee about that. But then he meets someone, and at the end, basically, of the series, he has this lovely boyfriend, and they're like, it's like a really lovely, wholesome representation, and without too many cliches, and I love that. And so I had to include that in here because it's such a lovely representation for people on the A spectrum. And he literally says it like several times in the series. So if you have not watched Wandee Good, you should. It is probably still on the research any like BLs, Thai BL or otherwise, where any character literally states either the definition or generally says that I'm demisexual or something like that. So this is more like, I think these characters are demisexual-coded / the internet, Tumblr, Twitter, other websites. People agree with me on this kind of coding that like the writers put in with these characters. And so I feel like we're just gonna go with that vibe because it's a little easier, because yeah, we are still not there apparently. But let's start with one of my favorite characters also, who I've talked about several times on my TikTok on here. It's A from Love by Chance, played obviously by Perth, one of my favorite actors. And the character of A is very interesting because he's literally introduced as like this young man who's like really not interested in relationship, in sex, but he has this sex obsessed roommate. He's not interested in porn. He's not interested in any of that. He just loves to play soccer. Like that's like his thing. He loves playing soccer. He gets up every morning at like 5. He goes jogging. It's like his thing. And he's like very, I love that though about him because he's a very honest character. And then he meets the character Pete. And they, through, trials and tribulations, like they become friends. They spend a lot of time together. There's also some harsher things that happen to Pete, and like A has to keep defending him. And so then after a few episodes, I feel that he's having feelings for Pete. He's sexually attracted to Pete, and of course have the most adorable first kiss. If you want to see that, you should watch my last video. Yes. No, literally, like, if you want to watch it, you can, because I talked about it there and you can see it. I've reacted to it. Anyway, and so the way that then I describes things to, for example, his friend slash roommate Pond is so demisexual coded, because he goes like, yeah, I've never had feeling for anyone, doesn't matter if it was a girl or guy, anyone. It really never interested me. I've never felt sexually attracted to anyone. Like, I didn't want to watch porn. I didn't find any of those people like attractive. I wasn't sexually aroused, anything like that. And so it's like, I think also then for I a little bit confusing, but because he's like, that has never happened to me. Why is this like the thing? But that's why I think he's such a demisexual coded character, because literally all the criteria, basically like the definitions, fit so well to him, because he becomes friends with Pete and they like really exchange a lot of like also life stories, and he's really there, and they spend really a lot of time together. And obviously he rescues him several times from his creepy kind of ex-boyfriend slash stalker and stuff. So it's like there's a really like strong emotional bond between them, and so that's why I feel like he fits perfectly. And I've said that also several times on like social media and things, because I think he's like the poster child for demisexuality, in my personal opinion anyway. And so that's why like I had to put him here first, because for me that's like the first character I think of. If someone says, tell me a demisexual coded character, this is the first one I think of. So yeah, like I love that. Okay, next we have Sangwoo from the BL Semantic Error, which there's like several layers to his character. He's also very autistic-coded, but he's also very demisexual, even demi-romantic coded. Like he's both, I would say, because it's like during like the show basically establishes that he has never felt sexual or romantic attraction to anyone, and it really confuses him. And so the first time when he feels this romantic attraction, for example, at first for Jae Young, right, which he has to work together, because that's the plot of Semantic Error. And he has to work together with this guy who's like infuriating him, and he's like annoying him, and he's like, what is this? And then he feels something else, which is not annoyance, but it's romantic attraction. And especially like in episode 5, he like Googles his symptoms. It's the cutest thing ever. He's like, what's happening? Am I having a heart attack? Like, why is this happening, basically? So yeah. And so that's why, like, as their like relationship progresses, as they become friends, also go through some things together, and like just spend a lot of time together, like the romantic attraction grows. And then even like I feel also like in the end there's also a sexual attraction, definitely, especially in the last 2 episodes, I would say. But then with Sangwoo, I think he also need to take into account that he is neurodivergent coded, like he is autistic coded. And even though that's a bit different experience from what I have, which is ADHD, I feel like I can also like guess a little bit and feel a little bit, because he's like also just overwhelmed by the newness of what is happening to him. Not just that it's happening, which we have with Love Budget with A, but like he's also, I think, in general then overwhelmed by the newness, by the not knowing what this is, which can be quite concerning. And so that's why I think he also does the thing, which I find adorable, but I understand, where he ends up Googling things. And so that's why I think he is like very demisexual, romantic coded, but obviously it's also a amalgamation with like the coding that he gets from like his autistic / neurodivergent coding. So that's why I love that character as well in general. But yeah, it's such a like interesting way that he's written, and also that Jae Young is written actually. So that's why I feel like the way that they work together was just magnificent. Also, 2 actors did it so amazing. I hope that at some point we get some kind of continuation, but I don't think so. But yeah. And then another one, which is also KBL, it's called Our Dating Sim. And in this it's about two like young Korean men, and they're working at the same, like they're, for some reason, all of a sudden they work for the same like software developing like agency firm thing. And they used to be friends in high school, but then one of them confessed to the other and then ran away. And then they weren't in contact for like several years. But then during the show, it comes out that both of them are still liking the other one, which I think also gives big demisexual energy, especially I think from Tae. I think that's what the character is called. But yeah, both of them, I think in general, because they really harbored this crush and these feelings for so long, and they didn't really let it go, even though they like had a lot of time. And then when they see each other and they like meet each other and they like become kind of friends again and co-workers, then I feel like it's like even like more like reignited. But yes, that's why I feel it would also be kind of fitting somewhat in that definition, I think. So that's why I wanted to put that in here. Also, I feel like Cherry Magic as an honorable mention should be in this video, because like both, like all of the characters in general from both adaptations, but especially the main characters, like the one who has the mind reading powers and the one who's like the fancy guy in the office, who's like everyone likes, both of them give like demisexual or demi-romantic or both vibes, I think. And then there's of course in the original Japanese Cherry Magic, the girl who is like their friend slash co-worker is also, I think, asexual. And so like she's like, that's really cool. I think she even says it in the Japanese version. And so I love that. And so I feel like Cherry Magic had to be mentioned in a video about this. Even though they never really say it, besides from in the Japanese version, like I said, the girl. But so that's why I thought it would be so fitting, because it is literally like like the one who has the mind reading powers. I now forget in which adaptation who has which name, but the one who has the right mind reading powers, he then basically like develops a crush on like this co-worker who's like everyone loves, because he keeps hearing his thoughts and keeps seeing things, and they spend a lot of time together and then they get closer. And I feel like that's so beautiful though, because he wasn't like really thinking about it, but then because he could see it, it was easier for him to basically like literally visualize it, and like so it became true. And I love that. That's so beautiful that this like quirky little thing that happens basically in that universe like brought him that much joy then basically into his life. So yeah. Okay, up next is My Love Mix-Up, which both versions tie in the Japanese version. The character called Kong Tap in the Thai version and Ida in the Japanese version. And they're both like this very stoic kind of character in the beginning, and they're giving like really big demisexual, demi-romantic vibes because of how the story is structured. Because he does not know that the whole thing, right, with the first confession at first, obviously, is that that wasn't a real confession, that he did it to protect his friend slash former crush. And so, but the way that he answers, the way that he's like, I need to think about it, I want to give this like a real chance, because he's like, okay, like I don't really know you, so I don't know if I could not like have feelings for you and or be attracted to you, so I want to try. And then he obviously has some feelings then as well, and then it's like that's how the love makes up like storyline goes, right? And then in the end they have both feelings for each other, even though in the beginning both of them didn't really have feelings for each other, which I love that. I love both versions, so cute and so adorable and so lovely and wholesome. And I also read the manga, it was also so cute, and that's why like I think it's really demisexual-coded the way that the character of Ida of Kongtap is like behaves towards, especially then like his potential love interest. And he's like, I need to think about this. I need to like, feel really into it and like spend time with you and like really try this out. And I feel like that's what I also don't understand sometimes when people say they want to date, but then dating also apparently sometimes means that you already have feelings. I'm like, no, I'm doing this to establish the connection so that we can have feelings, that we have maybe even potential sexual attraction. So I feel like he gets that struggle. Yes. Okay, so let's go on in our journey of like the demisexuality, and let's talk about then also my journey of discovery. And I have to say it did really start when I was a teenager, obviously. Also because of Tumblr, because I was a queer neurodivergent a woman, and then also was in boarding school, and so I feel like I had a lot of things that I needed to discover, but I also was a little bit of an outsider in some situations, and so really like Tumblr was really a refuge for like the teenage years sometimes, even though I don't think I had the worst teenage years, but there were struggles, in general. So that's why. And so when I was a teenager, I was like, yeah, like I have the crush on this person, or like, talking about sex, I was like, this is not 100%, like I couldn't 100% relate to everything they were saying, experiencing, feeling, the way they were literally also describing. Literally the way that they were describing basically like all these things that they were feeling, thinking and so on for other people. And so I was already struggling with some other things in my life, like I was ADHD, but I still have it, but I didn't take medication, which was hard in school. And I was in boarding school, and there was some like not so nice things also sometimes just in life. And so I felt generally often also a little bit as an outsider, not so much in boarding school, funnily enough, or in some parts of boarding school at least. But, and I really made some great friends, which some of them I'm still in contact with, but that's not the story. Let's not get distracted. And obviously I noticed that the way that I develop a crush, that I develop feelings, is very different to what a lot of people around me would describe and think and feel, basically. And so, as you know, a millennial, I turned to the internet and I was on Tumblr. And so I found these people on Tumblr who were saying, yeah, I'm asexual, I'm demisexual, I'm this, I'm that. And I was like, okay, like this is interesting that there's like not just like sexuality in the sense that who you are, like which gender or something like that, who you're attracted to, but it's literally also the like basically the spectrum of attraction, but also romantic attraction, so that sexual and romantic attraction are not like the same thing or intertwined in like a untangled sense, but more that they like come together. And so I learned there those things, and I was like, okay. But obviously as a teenager, I was like, I also had some other things to figure out, and I was not doing that well in school. And so I feel like I put it a little bit in the back of my mind. And also, I feel like I was just overwhelmed also in general by like being like, I didn't even want to be in a relationship. So that didn't really happen while I was like in school. And when I was then in university, obviously that was a bit of a different environment. Again, it was way much like also freer than in boarding school was. And then I studied in the Netherlands, so I met so many new people. And then like I was also part of all these organizations, like LGBTQ organizations and feminist organizations, and like meeting so many people with so many different like identifiers and identities. And we also, at this feminist organization I was at, we had also like several talks where it was about like, is it like about the difference between romantic attraction, sexual attraction, between being asexual and asexual sexual poles, and all like these different categories and little boxes that identifies an identity, which was so interesting and so important. And so I really was like, okay, like, yeah, demisexual, that is probably something that I am. And then there was also like obviously some people that I was then attracted to, but yeah, most of them really, it was because I got to know them over several days, weeks or months. And so I feel like that's why I I was like really quite sure even that that was definitely a part of my identity. But again, I don't know why. Then for a few years, I was also like kind of ignoring it a little bit. I don't know. And then I went to see a friend in the Netherlands, and then I had this like epiphany basically during that visit where I was like, yeah, like this is definitely what is my identity is, when close people also talking about it and things like that. And I was like, I really ever only felt attracted to people, like actually attracted, not like, oh, they're like a very nice person, I want to be friends with them, or they're very aesthetically pleasing. I mean, like actual sexual or romantic attraction even was like after, like romantic attraction after maybe several hours or days, and sexual attraction after weeks or months. And so that's why I was like really steadfast then in my like identity. And that was like 2 years ago, that visit. And so since then, I'm like, I am really happy with that. And I feel like that was really also important for my kind of self-acceptance, self-love journey that I've been on over the last also like 5 years. And so that's why I really wanted to make this video, especially in Pride Month, because I feel like it is very important to talk about all the different types of identities that are part of the LGBTQ community, but in general also of like me and then maybe also my audience. And so that's why I really wanted to put this part in here to just share my journey. And if you want, you can also share your journey with me, if you relate, if you don't relate. And yes, okay. Thanks for hanging out with me, my dreamy little fangirl Chaos Corner. Comment your journey, like your favorite character from this video, who you think is on the like asexuality spectrum, or who you think is asexual, demisexual coded. Comment that all below. Tell me all about it. And yeah, you know where the subscribe button lives. And I see you soon. Bye!